guess today I'm going to talk about not the Internet of Things, but the Internet of living things. But before I get going, I just want to acknowledge Yuri and Mark and others for taking care of me so well and getting me here so quickly. I just met Yuri at the beginning of the month, actually, at Singularity University. Singularity is a little odd. I'm not actually, I've never been faculty at a university before because I don't really fit into them very well. So it kind of helped that we got to build a university that worked for the types of things that I do. My background is genetics, and I hope that by the time you leave this room today, you will consider yourselves genetic engineers too. You're going to see it's possible. I'm going to give you a really short history of computing so that we're all on the same page. You guys probably recognize this. It's the first transistor, 1947. It looks like something you hacked together in your garage, but it changed the world. This is the most significant invention of the last century, arguably, and you're all here in this room because of it. It led to a mainframe computer model that stayed pretty much the same until the 1970s, and then something really weird happened. The microprocessor, VLSI electronics. And all of a sudden, computers became cheap. It wasn't just in the big universities, governments, corporations anymore. All of a sudden, you could start working with it in your garage. The two Steves hacking away, creating Apple, homebrew computer club in Silicon Valley. And next thing you know, toy computers everywhere. You can buy them in the back of magazines. This was revolutionary, and it changed the world. Because all of a sudden, you didn't have to be a professional to use computers. You could be a kid, and in fact, Radio Shack in North America started marketing to kids. They put out comic books that basically gave them enough information about computers that they bugged their parents. Buy me a computer. Gave them a few hints of what to do with it, and everything went mental. And next thing you know, the internet. Big, scary place, hard to find your way around until these guys came along. Built one of the fastest growing companies, and even now we know that just networking layer by layer is, who cares? You know, IPv6 will come up with new things too. What's really important in the last few years is now we have a social layer. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. It connects us, the living creatures at the end of the machine. It's created massive diversity, and you guys are all part of that. You know, how many cell phones do you need? How many brands of laundry detergent? I have no idea. All I know is they're proliferating like crazy. There are a few dominant species. And then the unknowns. It's still changing and still evolving extremely quickly. It's changed the world. And it's only taken 30 years. A blink of an eye. The world isn't the same. And you're all going to leave here and continue to change the world in new ways with the Internet of Things, with new applications, with new devices. And you're all on crack. It's happening so fast, most of us can't keep up with it. But I'm showing you a new world today. This is the world of living things. These are bacteria. They are the first natives of this world, the first inhabitants. They've been around for 4 billion years. They're going to be around long after we're gone. We'll probably find them on other planets all over the place. They're incredibly beautiful little creatures. And there's 10 times more of them in and on you than you have your own cells. These guys control you. They give you energy, they digest your food, and you can find them up in the atmosphere and as deep as we can drill on this planet. They are amazing little creatures. These are E. coli. These are the main bacteria that populate your gut. All they do is eat and grow. eat and grow, eat and grow, which is pretty cool. I look at these things as computers. They sense their environment, they do all sorts of calculations on chemicals, using chemicals to figure out what they're supposed to do, and they go do it. And they do it using sugar as an energy source. They use it using chemicals as their internet. And they do have a chemical internet. They talk to each other all the time. That's why you get plaque on your teeth. It's why the bacteria work together in your guts so that they don't attack your guts. What we're learning today is that biology has analogs in computing, and computing has analogs in biology. In fact, they're just two different forms of information processor. At the lowest level, the components, so to speak, are proteins. Kind of cool. But you link enough proteins together and you can actually get types of metabolic circuits, gates. Put enough circuits together, you get whole metabolism, really complex reactions, something we'd think of as a module or a system. Put enough systems together and you get a whole computer, a whole device. This is what we tend to think of as the living cell. But after that, living cells go on to form massive networks, which we today recognize as the internet, or, in the case of our cells, 100 trillion little computers working together to create an organism like us. This is amazing stuff. This is 100 trillion little computers working together to create something incredibly complex. And we only have a few billion devices connected to the internet. And our computers can't grow on sugar or run on sugar or duplicate themselves. These little guys are amazing. And it's all programmable with one molecule, DNA. Now, when I bought one of these first toy computers, and I loved it. Spent all my money on it, went downstairs, started working on it, writing programs, and they were just stupid little programs. But in 6 months, that computer was outdated. I had to go buy another one. New languages were coming out. And a few years later, I just realized I can't keep up with this shit. I can't buy the computers fast enough. I can't learn the languages fast enough. So I became a genetic scientist. The cell is a computer that's been stable for 4 billion years. And the language, the programming language, has been stable for 4 billion years. And code that runs on a bacterium will run on your cells, and vice versa. Like, this is so freaking cool. It turned out to be a really good time to actually get into DNA, because DNA is really, really hard to read. ATGC, it's like zeros and ones. You need computers. So to give you a little bit of background on DNA, and you probably all know this, Watson and Crick, of course, using information from Rosalind Franklin, discovered the structure. This was 6 years after the transistor. We stayed with the same model laboratory not till 1975 with mainframes, but until today. This is your typical molecular biology lab. It's just a complicated kitchen. That's all it is. Liquid handling, enzymes, whatever. And all we did for manipulating DNA was we chopped it up with molecular scissors and molecular glue to write new code. This is using scissors and glue with words that we're familiar with. I don't know if you guys have any experience writing ransom notes. I don't want to know. But I didn't, and so I had to try this out for myself. And this took 1 hour and 20 minutes to make. It looks Frankenstein-like. It's not spell-checked. This is essentially what genetic engineers have been doing for the last 30 years, cutting words up and splicing them together to make simple sentences. It's hard work, because you can't see the letters. You have to run more experiments just to see what the hell you've written. Can you imagine, though, if you had a printer for DNA? Well, about 10 years ago, we started to make DNA printers that were pretty damn good. Literally, type some sequence, print the code. This was revolutionary and completely screwed up anyone that was in genetics because they just weren't thinking that way. They were used to using scissors and glue. The costs started coming down on this stuff. The technology got better really fast because it's a digital science. It's using equipment that can evolve quickly. So now there's companies all over the world, like GeneArt, that if you send them DNA code, they'll send you back DNA. That's really cool. And in 2004, it was cheaper to synthesize new code than it was to pull it out of an organism and clone it, even just to duplicate it. It's been 6 years that this has been cheaper. Why don't we have genetic engineering proliferating everywhere? I don't know. I had to go and find out. The cost of doing this stuff is falling faster than Moore's law. We started the Human Genome Sequencing Project in 1990. We didn't know how we were going to read all the DNA in the human genome. We didn't build the equipment yet. But they said, yeah, we'll start. By 1995, only about 1% was done, although massive amounts of money, international collaboration had happened. Biggest science project ever. Then something strange happened. We got a new piece of equipment that made it easy. It lowered the cost by a factor of 10, and it made it automated. And all of a sudden, by 2000, we finished the genome sequence. It cost $3 billion. 3 years ago, if you wanted to get your genome sequenced, it was down to $1 million. Last year in 2008 in February, it was 350,000. By December, it was 99,000. Spring of this year, 37,500, and now there's a slew of companies that'll do it for $10,000. And in 2 years, there are companies claiming that they'll be able to do it for under $1,000 and even $100. That is a massive cost reduction. DNA synthesis is falling along the same curve. Right now, it's about 50 cents to get a base pair of DNA synthesized. Where is it going to be in 5 years? In 10 years? This is where it gets really interesting, folks. There was a group of people that started thinking about this really early on. They had an interest in biology, but they were engineers by training. They understood Moore's law. They understood the fact that you have to work together to engineer shit. You really do. You always stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before you. Everything has to work together. They started making a registry of standard biological parts. Nature's already figured this out. It's called genes. But they started doing it with human synthesized parts, giving it a part number, a function, specifications. They made it so you could slot these things together like Lego bricks, drag and drop genetic engineering. And they made it open source. Companies like GeneArt, this one is actually DNA 2.0 and a competitor, started making free editors for playing with DNA sequence. Incredibly powerful tools. What used to take years to make a new sequence, now you could just, like a word processor, flip things around, play with it in software. When you're ready and satisfied with what you want, hit print. Super cool. So we started doing what Radio Shack did. Started marketing to the kids. Why? Because the professors, they were a little slow on the uptake. So start with people that don't have any barriers, like the kids who started with computers. Teach them a new way. Don't teach them the old ways. Show them how to go fast. They picked up this stuff like crazy. The guys who started making the registry of standard biological parts were at MIT. electrical engineering and civil engineering. They grabbed a bunch of MIT students that were really keen in 2003 in a budget supplied by DARPA, the Defense Department, and they made a few parts, and they said, let's see if this works. And it did. It grew. In 2004, they got 5 teams, and they made bacterial photographic film. Bacteria, if you shone a light on it, it turned dark. Put it on a plate, shine some light on it, you have bacteria generating an image. People loved it. It was like a gigapixel camera. This group of students shared all their parts. They shared all their knowledge, all their tools, and you can go and access everything that they did and every part that they made. They put it into the collection, and the community grew fast. In 2005, we had 13 teams. In 2006, we had 38. Last year, 110 teams from 25 countries, 1,500 people, everything shared. Millions and millions of dollars worth of genetic parts, all open source, all ready to be strung together in new ways by the next class. This year, it's going to be massive. These are kids that have never been in a lab before, for the most part. They've never done any genetic engineering. They don't have their degrees. We found that you couldn't teach it to grad students. You had to teach it to undergrads and then high school students because they have all the time. It's not expensive to do this stuff. It's mostly free. And what we found is when you give it to the youngest kids, their creativity goes mental. They do things like make bacteria that can go into all different colors, kind of like LEDs. So you can add these genes to metabolic pathways and literally watch them light up as they turn on and off different genes in complex metabolism. It's like all the blinking lights on your computers. Super cool. Or these guys that said, hey, why do we even need a physical lab? Let's put it in Second Life. Teach all the kids to do it in Second Life. Learn all the projects. I know, it's Second Life, but still. Wait till it's in World of Warcraft. They started doing really fun projects, and this was one of my favorites from a couple years ago. They took Saccharomyces cerevisiae, brewer's yeast, I think you guys know something about that here in Amsterdam, and they added 2 genes from grape. So it produced a compound called resveratrol, which is the stuff in red wine that's supposedly antioxidant, anti-cancer, cancer-fighting beer. It's like, this is awesome stuff. One of the groups that I worked with last year said, you know, this pudding plug-and-play biology, it works pretty well, but it's still too slow. So they devised a new way to do it, and they put it all on a chip. This is just a simple one, but then they used a Lego Mindstorms robot, you know, to actually do the assemblies, and now they can do giant genetic assemblies that major biotech companies couldn't do 10 years ago, and they can do it in 2 hours for virtually free. And this is just generation 1 of this stuff, which is why these toy genetic engineers and these genetic engineering technologies now make the cover of some of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. And it's so much fun. It's also why facilities like this one, a biofab, you guys know all about chip fabs. Now we have biofabs, and they're popping up at places like Stanford University. It's all the same tools and technologies that the kids made and developed and tested and proved worked. Now it's being formalized so all the academics can have access to it. And if you're looking for new investments, wait till you see these things go private, because they're going to pop up all over the world. Because you can send DNA sequence, they'll synthesize it, they'll put it in a cell, they'll boot it, they'll test it, and they'll send you the data, and you never have to walk into a lab. You can do it from a Starbucks. But even then, you know, the MIT program is done in a structured academic setting. Runs once a year, it's a competition. It's basically the Olympic Games of genetic engineering. And it's a little too constrained. So a couple friends of mine, this guy's name is Mac Cowell, and another friend, Jason Bobe, got together and they said, hey, you know what, let's do do-it-yourself biology. And let's run it year-round, and let's do genetic engineering, but let's hack some of the equipment, and let's change the whole lab environment. And they did. And DIY bio is one of the hottest growing fields of biology now. In 2 years, there are now thousands of people in countries, and they're starting to organize into labs, and they teach people how to do things with comic books, and they put videos on YouTube and all the different science channels, and they tweet, and they're smart and really fast evolving, kind of like computers. And they're playing with equipment like this, which is a $10 PCR machine for amplifying DNA, and they go, oh, yeah, you know, we can use it for all sorts of stuff. We can make it with spare parts. They go and hack webcams and turn them into microscopes. They go and play with gel boxes. They're actually recreating most of the tools and technology that scientists have been using for years, but they're doing it super cheap and sharing how to do it. They show people how to isolate DNA, how to sequence it. And you find a level of passion in this community that's a little... You don't find this at Cambridge. So, where does it all go? We already know that genetics has become so cheap, so easy to access, that you can go and get spit kits from Decode Me or 23andMe, and you literally just spit in it, send it off in FedEx, and a few weeks later you get your genetic sequence. And now you can be tested for hundreds of diseases, all sorts of different markers. They can tell your eye color, whether you have sticky earwax. It's pretty cool. Here's my report. Apparently, I'm going to die of psoriasis. Yeah, I know, but it's true. I have really bad skin. We're starting to realize that binning people into clusters and doing clinical trials on them is stupid, because each of us is a clinical trial with thousands of variables, and we're non-compliant in the way we do things. And we cheat, and we do all sorts of bad things. But now we record it in our own clinical trial system. And then we do meta-trials on ourselves, and we figure out what works and what doesn't. It's starting to affect pharma. Pharma, you know, it's like making a blockbuster film. You try and hit all the notes for everyone and make everyone happy, and sometimes you get an Avatar, and sometimes you get a Battlefield Earth. Too many cooks. Ultimately, we want drugs for us and us alone. That's all we care about, especially if you have cancer. Cancer, every single one is different because we all have different genomes and we all get different mutations. So we're learning whole new ways of targeting medicines. We're also learning more about ourselves. This is a Fitbit, just a little accelerometer, tracks. This is bioinformatics you actually care about. I had one, I lost it yesterday. I went through withdrawal. Somewhere my Fitbit is on your streets. So if you make tools and technologies like this, I want it to scream like a spanked child when it goes too far away from my iPhone. This is a Band-Aid that measures your heartbeat as well as other information, sends it all to your phone. This is so cool. But we're going to start doing other stuff, like making better rice varieties. This is golden rice, it has vitamin A, but you know, this has gotten all mired in politics and food politics. What if we, what are the kids gonna come up with? I have no idea. Maybe they'll make golden yeast. Or maybe they'll take this molecule, you probably don't know what it is, Delta-9 THC. Really good molecule. Made by one particular plant. But that plant is being sequenced, and that entire metabolic pathway is going to be put into a yeast in the next few years, and some graduate student is going to have a $20 billion yeast strain, which is going to make for some of the coolest sourdough and some of the coolest beer. Maybe even kombucha, if that's what you're into. So this is kind of the next factory. This is quite a beautiful little fermenter. But we're going to have fermenters of all sizes. We know this from brewing beer and brewing wine. Small, medium, city-sized. And it's not just going to be making ethanol anymore. It's not even just going to be all inside fermenters. Some of it may be in our backyard. Of course, that's going to take a little while to get over some of the inhibitions and problems, and I don't know how that'll go, but we'll start shifting there as we come to trust it more. Everything that we make today we use a chemical process, that we use an industrial process, if it can be moved biochemical, it's going to go that way because it's so much easier to grow stuff and have it self-assemble and run on sugar and sunlight than it is to build manufacturing plants and deal with all the toxic waste. We're going to get inspired by nature, and nature will inspire your systems. We're going to have pets. These are glowfish, genetically engineered zebrafish. FDA said, we're not touching that in terms of approving it. Go for it. These are cats that have an extra gene, so if you shine a fluorescent light on them, they glow in the dark. What? I know. But maybe one day we'll just plant a seed and grow a home. I don't know, or maybe we'll print it. Maybe we'll bring back dinosaurs. Maybe we'll bring back Neanderthals. I don't know. All I know is if we can sequence it, we can put it in a data bank, and if we can synthesize it, we can bring it back. It's closing the loop of digital to real and real to digital. We have to do this, guys, because right now we are the only organism on this planet that separates itself from nature. If we go out into nature, strip down, go out into nature, we're dead in a week. Most of us. I would be. I'd be dead in 2 days. Our cities are non-living, and yet our cities are growing, and we're covering every square inch of this planet, which means we're going to have to engineer living things that we can live with, that give us some value and purpose. And you know what? We're starting to get there, because now the creativity is being unleashed. It's not just a health issue anymore. It's literally, how do we coexist? We are living creatures. We need a living world. It's not all work. It can be play. This is a brilliant fellow by the name of Paul Rothmund that takes little genomes and bends them together into interesting shapes. DNA origami. I like the happy faces. But now they're making things into boxes and other complex structures too. This is the first commercial not DNA printer, a cell printer. It's like a 3D printer, but it lays down living cells. It's like, now they're talking about doing things like printing a heart or a liver, maybe a brain one day. I don't know. All I know is these are all technologies that will get cheaper, faster, and we'll share it, and we'll make money, and we'll open up new industries. These guys, you probably recognize it. This is Zach. He's one of the co-founders of MakerBot. They're already modding this thing to be able to deposit cells. This is going to be so much fun. People are going to be making little cyborgs at home using simple cell structures. But you guys are a mobile crowd. You know phones, you know networking. This is a UCLA researcher that just put $10 worth of lenses on a cell phone, so now he's got a microscope. And he can take slides and put it in that microscope and do things like this, do blood counts, which are incredibly important things. We still all go for blood tests each year. But now you can do it with your mobile phone, which is really helpful if you don't have a lab. So if you're looking for new things to put in mobile phones, yeah, it's great that there's a 10-megapixel camera. Put a microscope. That's cool. Or these guys. These guys use chip fabbing technologies to make DNA sequencers. Super cool. They basically are the world's most sensitive pH meters, because when you add a new base of DNA to an existing strand, which is how we sequence DNA today, we actually synthesize it and read what bases are being attached, it detects the ionic changes. And this thing right now is a device that sits on top of a desktop, but in 5 years, it'll be a module you can plug into your phone. And it sequences in real time. Like, in 30 minutes, you're going to be able to do a genome on your cell phone. What do you do with all this information? Well, some high school kids in New York said, hey, let's go out and sequence the fish that they're selling at the local fish market, and they found that half the fish wasn't the fish they said it was. That's kind of cool. Verify your sushi before you eat it. We're going to use it, we all were affected by swine flu. I was actually in Mexico when it broke out. I have this bad habit of showing up in pandemics. Your cell phone can be a biosensor, more powerful than any biosensor we have on the planet today. That is a multi-billion-dollar defense industry, and it's all networked. Or maybe your DNA sequence is going to be part of your next dating system. All I know is Darwin never saw this coming. Whether you believe that life started at the bottom of the ocean and the black smokers and chemical environments so toxic that we shouldn't be able to live under pressures and temperatures that are absolutely astounding, or whether you have a different idea how life was created, I'm open. We're starting to boot up the next generation of organisms. We're at the point where we can synthesize synthetic bacteria. And that's pretty damn cool. That means it took 4 billion years for the bacteria on this planet to come around and boot up their own bacteria. I don't know how long the second cycle will take, but I guarantee it's not going to take that long, because we're starting a parallel evolution that's going really fast. Expect to see the next Human Genome Project pop up in the next year or two. This time not reading a genome, a big international stimulation of the scientific community to be able to write a human-scale genome. I'm not saying boot up synthetic humans, but to be able to synthesize 6 billion base pairs fast, organize into chromosomes, add sugars, add methylations, to be able to go and do this stuff. And we'll boot up monkeys or mice or something to show that it works. But wow, that's going to make for a really interesting science project. Juan Enrique, who is a co-founder of Craig Venter's company, Synthetic Genomics, and a frequent TEDster, spoke last year and he said, we're actually going to become a whole new species, Homo evolutus, because really we're the generation now, the next 20 years, we're going to start taking direct and deliberate control over every living thing, including ourselves. And this is a brave new world. All I know is it's going to be put down on the back of the information systems you guys know and understand, and it's all software and hardware that you already understand, and it translates directly. It's easier for you guys to understand where this is going than the biologists today. And we got to do it right. And we got to take some responsibility for this. I'm going to leave it at that, but a really good friend of mine, one of the guys who started the field of synthetic biology, his name is Rob Carlson. And for 5 years, he's been writing this book. And it's been one of the hardest books he ever wrote because the damn technology is changing so fast. The field is only 6 years old. So this book came out just a few weeks ago. If you're interested in anything that I talk about, most of it's covered in this. And he gives business examples and really puts it into this whole context of where it could go. And it's really powerful stuff, and I hope you all appreciate that. If you can type today, you can be a genetic engineer. You'd just be a shitty one until you know what to type. But it's coming. The internet of living things is already around us, and it's going to go deeper and global and change the world as we know it. Thank you. I'll let you guys figure out, yeah.
Yeah, let's start here. Just one question, because what I see is still a divide between biology and technology. When is my brain connected to the internet biologically?
I'm talking about hacking metabolism. It's really low level. We're talking biochemicals. Of course, our brain is neuroelectrochemical. That's a whole, we had living organisms on this planet for 1 billion years before we had to organize a nervous system. We are going to start hacking brains at some point, but not until we get the low-level technology done. But yes, at some point there will be machine-brain interfaces. Today, it's kind of slow. We have to use our thumbs. But it'll get more direct. I can't give you a timeline. All I know is it's a really big area of research.
I see here is a question. You talk about hacking, and of course all the hackers here are brilliant programmers who never make any errors in their code, but outside this building there's a bunch of hackers and coders who generally just fuck everything up and make Windows and even worse things.
Yep.
And now we get to...
How are we all going to survive this? Yeah. Yeah, I get asked that a lot.
Invasive species is kind of a problem already. Invasive bacteria.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And so there's some really good examples of invasive species where we screwed things up really badly. Every time a freighter picks up seawater, sails across the ocean, drops a few million gallons in another place, think of all the bacteria that are going along for that ride. Every time we hop on airplanes, and I don't know the stats for Europe, but I know in North America there's 28,000 flights a day. We're doing this massive combinatorial shuffling of our bacteria, of our viruses, of everything that we're carrying around on us. Even snakes and other things on planes that get picked up. How do we survive it? Well, we survive it, we're really fortunate that we have this amazing thing called an immune system, which, when you think about it, is brilliant because it generates combinatorial defenses for a combinatorial, enemy it may never see. Every possible combination of protein. And it's incredibly efficient, and it rarely fails. When it does, it's catastrophic for us most of the time, or you get psoriasis. A little too sensitive. But nature is the biggest hacker. Nature doesn't care. And it's hacking on an order that we can't imagine. That being said, we're crafty. So, if we start to hack our way around the immune system, it can get really nasty. But again, all of this genetic engineering is based on computer technologies. And we trust computer technologies for looking for patterns that are inappropriate. And we're getting better and better at doing that. I think it's a really good time to start thinking about how we look for information patterns of people that would be doing inappropriate things with genetic engineering. Most of the synthetic biology community is open. We're already working with law enforcement communities. We want to put firewalls into our sequencers and our synthesizers so that we don't make bad things, but we also start to identify ourselves to the community. And when there will be, in all likelihood, accidents and nefarious people. But again, it takes months for a flu virus to spread around the world. Literally months. It takes minutes for information. And as we get faster at being able to make defenses using the same technology and distribute it with information systems and have it manufactured, distributed in a way, we're kind of going to build a global immune system. So I hope that answers your question. We shouldn't all die tomorrow. We'll get through it, just like we did with computers.
Any more
questions? Is there a microphone going around? Okay.
Of course.
Oh, by the way, biology is digital at the code level, but appears to be analog everywhere else because it's a parallel processor running in liquids.
Yes. Thank you. I totally agree. And I would like to ask you something about the other route, from biology back to informatics.
Yes.
And I want to bring up an example of a great Dutch inventor. It's a very controversial story, but there was this Dutch inventor, Jan Sloot, who made a compression algorithm, a video compression algorithm, that, by the looks of it, had the same data compression abilities as DNA does. Because we all know that, although we have, and you're better at this than me, but we have like 30,000 genes, and only 30 of them comprise me, right? It's like a very elegant compression system that only a very small amount of genes can make a huge difference in a person. So my question is, are we getting towards understanding this information system that's in DNA and being able to apply it, like maybe Jan Sloot has done, towards building hyper-efficient, hyper-elegant information systems on our computers?
That's a really good question. Let's just say that we have a lot of trouble understanding the compression mechanisms in biology because nature's been kind of tweaking the algorithm for like 4 billion years, and it didn't take notes, and there was no versioning system. So, what we're learning is it's actually probably going to be faster to build a parallel synthetic biology and start from the bottom up and have all the notes. That being said, we are already learning a lot of things from the way living cells do redundant systems, that they do error correction, that they, essentially, come on, we're machines that live for, on average, 85 years running on sugar, eating crap. producing crap too. But you know, with virtually no maintenance, and you know, most of us don't die from cancer. You know, we die from old age, and granted, by then you start getting enough corruptions in the system that we recognize as various cancers. But that's really remarkable for machines. And if we can learn some of the mechanisms that genetic material and cells use for keeping systems up and running and being robust and operating in all these extremes, and build them into our own systems, it would be pretty cool. Now, if the trade-off is they're all crazy machines, well, that's not good. But you know, we're learning. It's a two-way conversation. This is the beauty of learning to work with a new digital code and a new type of processor. They're informing systems back and forth.
So I'm here in the back, near the pulpit, with a question. Yes, Andrew, this way. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Great, the Internet of Things, nanotechnology, DNA. Now, we in Europe and in America, we always disagree on politics. How much do they basically already get into this world? How much does political systems are always slow, so they will take a long time to figure out that this is happening. But how do they think about it in Europe, and how do they think about it in America? And will they be a problem into this accelerating development?
Yeah, the regulatory architectures are quite slow and they tend to lag. Even the educational institutions lag. You know, again, the only way to really create the future is to go and build it. And this is what we're seeing with these students. Even though they're the youngest and don't have degrees and typically aren't awarded the prestige of a senior researcher, they're actually leading the field. Let's just say that there's as much fear around genetic engineering. It's pretty much global. There's always an element that fears it, that worries about this type of change, and for very real and valid reasons. That being said, the technology is out of the box. It's been out of the box for since 1970, so 40 years. It's just getting faster, better, cheaper, and so it's moving into new hands. We're getting new creativity, but we're also getting new risks. I think it's not a technology that you can be. I think it's a technology we all have to engage in. I think it's going to be one of the major economic drivers of this century, if not the biggest, because computers really power the world's economy today. But computers are dumb, and we don't care about them. You're not going to run back into a burning building. Living things are important, and our lives are important. So this is going to be a massive economy. So we have to find the right balance of risk and benefit to ourselves. We need it to clean up our world. We need it to be healthy. We need it to make new materials. And you know what? It's going to be driven economically, because you can make all this stuff photosynthetic, either directly or as a two-step process, taking sugars that are grown and feeding it to these things, which means it's also going to be a pretty big part of the carbon economy. You know, so if there's money and economy moving into it and massive benefits in health and biomanufacturing, other tools, people are going to go do it, even if it's, you know. And so the regions that are more permissive and have laws that are sane, you know, that don't hold it back, but are sane, are realistic. There's a process. You know how to go and do this. It's rational. There's oversight. Are going to be the big winners. And I hope that's a global win. I hope we don't have to play off one country off another. That's why I support open source biology, open source biotechnology, and I really hope that we can build a universal system like the internet for all of us to work in, whether we're open source or whether we're proprietary.
One last question.
Yes, can you explain me what's the part of the soul in all this? The soul, the art, the...
No, that's a very good question. I try not to get involved in those types of philosophical discussions because I see you guys are really hard with that. But here's the way I look at it. Life is an emergent system. Any living thing, a bacterium, you know, they're really not that much different. The code is pretty similar. You know, the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. So I look at that as kind of where the soul is. Does a bacterium have a soul? Do we have a soul? I don't know. I'm just a stupid geneticist. But I do know that the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts, and I look at that as a kind of magic. So all life is magical.
Thank you, Andrew.
I thought I turned off my phone, but yeah.
Thank you very much. Again.